The research shows that people who are intrinsically motivated to make change are more likely to succeed. So I think it's important to remember that if you are planning to make a change in your lifestyle this year, do it for yourself and not for anyone else.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the HSE Talking Health and Wellbeing podcast. This is our first episode for 2025 and we'd like to wish you all a healthy new year, and that's our theme of the podcast today. We'll be talking about advice and support for you to have a healthy new year, and because we know many of our listeners are supporting other people and other communities, we'll also be talking about how to support your own behaviour change and other people's behaviour change as well. My name is Fergal Fox and today we are speaking with HSE Health Promotion and Improvement colleagues Sean Conneely and Nollaig Chárthaigh. Nollaig is based in Galway and Sean in Mayo. You're both very welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Fergal.
Thanks, Fergal.
Sean, can I come to you first? We have to touch on the New Year resolution theme, and a lot of people might be complaining about the new year, new you, but it is a time of reflection, isn't it? How do you see it?
It is certainly, Fergal. January, I suppose, and the new year in general, it's a time about creating new habits and investing in yourself. And as you said, after reflection in December, January is always about looking forward to the new year. And this time of year, I'm always reminded of Bard's famous quote when he said, "Although no one can go back and make a brand new start, anyone can start from now and make a brand new ending." So I think this quote resonates with people at the start of every new year and highlights the importance of making plans for the future and that it's never too late to start living a healthier life.
Yeah, I think that's definitely encouraging. It's never too late to start. No, look, do you think there's too much made of the January, or do you think it's an important opportunity for health and wellbeing change?
No, I think it's a great opportunity. It can be a very powerful time as well to implement that positive behaviour change. The key to all of that is sticking to those small, realistic and sustainable choices. Those are the things that can make all the difference. And just remembering that looking after our health is a long-term commitment. So sticking to building those healthy habits in a gradual way, I think will make all the difference to having that more balanced way of life.
Yeah, I think a lot of us overcommit in our heads. Sometimes I think, I promised myself I'd do this thing, but I promised myself I'd do it last year. And actually, I promised I'd do it the year before, and it's nearly too big to bite off. So it's too big of an adjustment. We're not breaking it into the little bits. That's a big thing, isn't it? Not taking on too much.
Yeah, I mean, health behaviour change, it's a process, Fergal. So in health promotion, it's not just about promoting, it's also about encouraging and enabling positive behaviour change. We know that the most prevalent chronic health conditions, including cancer, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, they're all strongly linked with lifestyle. And the evidence continually shows that a healthier lifestyle, including, regular exercise, a balanced diet, not smoking, these are all associated with living a longer and healthier lifespan. So these are all parts of the jigsaw, really, parts of the puzzle, and we have to take each one in different stages.
Yeah, and I suppose different people are at different places in terms of their behaviour change, and then like you touched on a lot of topics there that all feed into how healthy of a life you're going to have. But different people will be looking at different topics from time to time. We'll discuss a range of the topics, but it comes back to one of the things that you've kind of alluded to there, Nollaig, around, are you ready for the change? Or where are you at in terms of yourself? That comes back to the period of reflection. Are you ready to make a change? Isn't it? That's what I'm getting at.
That's it. I think a great way to think about behaviour change, it's almost like training for a marathon. So it's not about taking those giant leaps all at once. It's more about those kind of steady, consistent steps. And each step that you take will build on the last step. And then over time, you might get to a point where you've made great progress and you've gotten even further than you thought you might.
Yeah. It's a point that I think we often don't think about enough, is that we've made behaviour change in the past. So you have to give yourself a bit of credit for the small step, but for past success. In terms of motivation, Sean, how do we get people to think about their intention and their motivation?
Yeah, I suppose at the heart of behaviour change is motivation, as you quite rightly said. And when we talk about people making New Year's resolutions, I think it's important to touch on what drives people to succeed. So everyone's motivation is different. For some, it's extrinsic, where they're driven by other people. For others, it's intrinsic, where motivation comes from within. And the research shows that people who are intrinsically motivated to make change are more likely to succeed. So I think it's important to remember that if you are planning to make a change in your lifestyle this year, do it for yourself and not for anyone else.
And what's the advice that you give people around making a behaviour change? What should they be reflecting on? What do I need to have?
Well, everyone needs goals, so goal setting is very important. So achieving your goals is a process. So from setting your target to overcoming obstacles to sustaining momentum, these are all part of the process. So it's important to choose an activity that you want to do to improve your health and be realistic, because you will encounter obstacles along the way and you will have to overcome them. So some of the most common goals people set for themselves are to eat healthier, to exercise more, to reduce stress, and to quit smoking. So these are the big four, Fergal, that people aim for at the start of every year. And they all complement each other. They don't have to be done in isolation. They can form part of an overall change strategy. So often some people may start out with one of these four goals to achieve and end up reaching all four of them by year end.
Yeah. In terms of tobacco, that's one of our big priority programs in the HSE. We've got a massive quit campaign, but it's an ongoing driver of health inequalities and illness. What we often say is that's the number one thing you can do for your health and well-being if you're a smoker. And I know you've worked in this area in the past. How do we support people around that particular behaviour change?
Well, the HSE's quit smoking service that operates across the country, it's a fantastic free and confidential service, and the service works really well. So the research shows that people who smoke are up to 4 times more likely to quit with support and medication. Last year's 2024 Healthy Ireland survey showed that 17% of the population are current smokers. Smoking rates are higher among the 25 to 34-year-old bracket, and men are more likely to smoke than women. So I think it's important when we talk about setting out a stall at the start of the year, like any other health behaviour change, quitting is a journey. It's about reaching milestones. For example, if you stop smoking for 28 days, you're 5 times more likely to stop for good.
Yeah, that was one of the messages of our campaign. Yeah, people would have seen that in the media. That is very strong. Like when you think about the behaviour change again, the journey, the process, 28 days, trying to do something consistent for 28 days makes it normalised. You've definitely built in a new habit, haven't you?
Yes, and I suppose one of the take-home messages there is to get started on your quit journey early in the year. We will help you to reach that 1-month milestone, and then you're giving yourself a really good shot at quitting for good.
What I've emphasised before on the podcast is that the service, either the remote, the online support, but the one-to-one counselling, the face-to-face potential counselling, it's a very special service. We don't have it for lots of things, but we have it for people that smoke. And it does allow the smoker to come into a space where they can get a lot of issues kind of discussed, getting handheld through their behaviour change. It's important to emphasise that.
It really is. There's a great collaborative initiative here in the West with Quit Smoking West and the Family Resource Centres, where stop smoking advisors hold face-to-face clinics in designated FRCs across Galway, Mayo and Roscommon. So the Stop Smoking Advisor will work on site 1 day a week and provide a free walk-in service at the heart of people's communities. So people feel comfortable in meeting a Stop Smoking Advisor in a non-medicalised setting, in a local setting where they can start their quit journey. So it's a real positive initiative.
That's very good. The Family Resource Centres are a consistent theme in our podcast series because they are the basis for a lot of community health and well-being. The other things that people will see during January, you'll see the quit campaign on the TV and you'll hear it on the radio. And I know that our tobacco lead, Martina Blake, is very concerned about vaping, and it's in the last budget there was announced funding for a vaping campaign. So that'll be in development in 2025. So we look forward to seeing developments on that. And I know vaping is a big concern.
Yeah, again, the Healthy Ireland just survey to reference it. Not surprisingly, it showed that vaping is highest among younger people aged between 15 to 24 years of age. So some users might not realise that vapes contain high levels of nicotine, which can result in users becoming nicotine dependent very quickly. So vaping, it's a real concern for parents, particularly because it's much harder to detect than smoking, and it's easier for kids to conceal from their parents. So again, just to remind everyone, Fergal, that vapes are not licensed stop smoking products like the NRT, the nicotine replacement therapy products that we see on our shelves for sale in pharmacies. And vapes are not recommended to wean people off cigarettes. And again, it just reminds me of another great programme, the Quit for Youth programme. It's a 7-week stop smoking and our stop vaping group programme for young people. It's co-facilitated by a stop smoking advisor and a youth worker, and it's aimed at those attending youth groups such as Fergal. And again, it targets the young people who are really susceptible to vaping in the current times.
Yeah, the vaping culture has definitely kind of come on leaps and bounds that we have to really respond to it. And I was encouraged this year to see our tobacco programme develop resources for parents and develop resources for people working with young people in the youth sector. And they reached out to teachers and principals and assistant principals during the year with those resources, because there is a hunger for clarity around the vapes. And just as you specified there, it's not a step down from smoking. It's not a recommended aid for quitting. And then the other issue that you highlighted there is is the NRT, which you've been able to offer free.
That's
the
correct.
nicotine replacement therapy. That advancement has seen a big increase in the use of the quit services.
Yeah, I think some people confuse vapes with NRT, but as I said, vaping wouldn't be seen as a way of weaning off cigarettes. The research has shown that it's inconclusive. It's not a safe nicotine replacement therapy because it does indeed contain nicotine and some very high levels of nicotine.
Okay. So moving on from tobacco, you mentioned the big four there, and the healthy eating is another one of the big four. And we all, I think many people do kind of go out with optimism in January and say, now, how can I improve my eating and my nutrition? Nollaig, I'm going to come to you on this. What do you think we should start thinking about on this one?
Yeah, I think with the new year, it can be an ideal time really to look at improving our healthy eating habits and focusing on balanced meals that give us that energy and that vitality and that helps us with our long-term health as well. And there are so many benefits to this as well, helping us to have a healthier body weight, a reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease and cancer, a healthy cholesterol level and improved well-being as well.
What's a healthy approach to the healthy eating? Do we need to think about it before we go shopping?
It could be something, yes, that you're implementing throughout the week and just thinking about having a diet that is quite balanced, thinking about portion control and the foods that are healthy for us. So for example, having a balanced diet gives us everything that we need to kind of function optimally throughout the day. And eating a wide variety of nourishing foods gives us that energy that we need to stay healthy. So for example, using the food pyramid as a guide is a good idea for the serving sizes. And also the Healthy Food for Life resources can give you great guidelines on portion sizes. Those are available on the HSE website and you can download great resources from healthpromotion.ie as well. But just some tips on foods that are healthy, generally speaking, as well. So, for example, filling up your plate, half of your plate, with vegetables, salads and fruit at every meal, and choosing a variety of colours. So really your plate should be quite bright and inviting with the use of all of these foods. And then choosing wholemeal and whole grain breads, cereals, pasta and brown rice, low-fat milk, yoghurt and cheese. And if you can, limit how often you eat processed meats, as well as limiting the foods that are in the top shelf of the food pyramid. These would be high in fat, sugar and salt. So you can eat them occasionally, but they wouldn't be for every day. And a good idea might be to replace those with healthier snacks like fruit and vegetables.
One of the things that came across very strongly to me under the Safe Food campaign was that the things that you're highlighting there aren't pushed to us as much as the unhealthy food is pushed to us. And in terms of what children see and what's sold to children and parents in terms of unhealthy food or that high sugar, high salt, processed food. So we do need to make that extra effort. It's not going to be sold to us very well, is it?
Absolutely. That extra effort is needed and probably preparation would be key generally for this. So for example, planning your meals in advance. This can be very helpful if you do have a bit of a hectic lifestyle. And what this is great for as well is it can help limit takeaways. And so if you can prepare your meals using mostly fresh ingredients as well, there are healthier cooking methods than others. So for example, grilling and steaming would be better than frying or roasting with oil and fat. And if you can, take time to enjoy your meals sitting at a table instead of sitting and eating in front of your screens or your devices. And another great tip would be to keep a food diary, maybe for even just a week or two. You can have a look at then what you're consuming and when you're consuming it. And this might help you to consider and decide what changes might be needed.
So it's pulling you into that ongoing reflection space, the food diary, and being accountable to yourself.
Absolutely. It's keeping yourself accountable, keeping you on track. And that motivation will be there as well. And there are so many great resources that can help you to do that. So if you have a look at the HSE Healthy Eating Guidelines webpage, the food pyramid is there for all different age groups as well. And there are plenty of daily meal plans. And another excellent resource that's on there is the 101 Plus Square Meals book. This gives great, healthier meals to give you the best value for money, but the recipes are very easy to follow at the same time. And there's great information as well on food safety and nutrition on the Safe Food website.
Okay, now I appreciate for the listeners, we are giving you multiple signposts. I know different people will be different and interested in different things, but we will give you the signpost as much as we can in the podcast information, wherever you're listening to this, on Spotify, Apple or YouTube or wherever. We'll have the links in the podcast information. So coming back to you, Sean, on the physical activity, this is another big one that people say, okay, now I'm reminded of what Nollaig said at the start around behaviour change is like a marathon. It doesn't happen overnight. And physical activity is probably something that we shouldn't leap into, pardon the pun.
Yeah, and it's something that we shouldn't be intimidated by either. The HSE guidelines are very achievable. So the guidelines state that we should all aim to achieve 30 minutes of moderate exercise a day, 5 days a week. And that 30 minutes can be broken down into 3 10-minute sessions. So it is very achievable. Just a reference to Health Ireland survey again, it tells us that less than half of those surveyed meet the national guidelines. And it also tells us that the youngest age group tend to be the most active. So I suppose the adult population need to up their game, step up to the mark a bit in this regard, Fergal.
It is encouraging from my point of view, and I think walking is the easy onset or the easy way to kind of get off to a healthy new year. Increase your walking, or take some, if you do have some annual leave or some time off, that you're using that for a healthy walk, or up in your walking distance or up in your walking pace. But different people, again, are at different places in terms of their ability around physical activity.
Yeah, and there are some great resources and initiatives aimed at adults at lots of different levels available in people's own communities. So, for example, the Men on the Move. This is a 12-week community-based beginners programme for inactive men, and it's delivered by local sports partnerships in conjunction with the HSE. Or again, another great initiative, the Couch to 5K. We're all familiar with this initiative. It's supported by the Irish Heart Foundation, again delivered by local sports partnerships in the community. And these are achievable goals, and it's really to encourage people to start being active and start early in the year, have a milestone to aim for, such as 5K. It really encourages people to get out in the outdoors and get moving.
I think it's important to emphasise different people will be at different places, take on your goals depending on where you're at. And you've emphasised the group programmes, because they do give that bit of social and peer support to your physical activity. Men on the Move was actually founded in Mayo, where you're based, but it's programmes like that. When you hear the feedback from some of the participants on programmes, it's nearly like they've got a social, mental well-being enhancement, not just a physical health enhancement out of physical activity.
Yeah, it's a great outlet, and to incorporate a social side of it is really helpful as well, and it does help motivation levels also. And again, when people return to work after the Christmas holidays, there are lots of workplace initiatives available that are taking place. I know the Steps to Health Challenge, it's run every year for HSE staff, and I know here in the West, last year we had a very successful challenge with over 100 teams participating in the challenge from across Galway, Mayo and Roscommon. And it's not all about reaching that 10,000 step target each day over the 5 weeks. There's a fun element to these initiatives as well. Competitions are ran in relation to the best team photos of the funniest team names. So it's part of being a team, as you said. There's a social aspect, working with your work colleagues to get active.
Yeah, in terms of any behaviour change, if you have a buddy with you along the way, or somebody else is going to push you when you're lagging, or you can pull, that does make a huge difference. I think that the evidence does highlight that if you're not going alone or feel isolated in your behaviour change, be it physical activity or anything else, you're much more likely to sustain it, aren't you?
Oh yeah, definitely it works, and it'll work for your buddy as well. You know what I mean? It'll be that added incentive for him or her to get out and get active. And again, if you're, I suppose, making an arrangement to meet someone of a Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock, you're going to try and make sure that you can make that appointment. You don't want to let your buddy down. So it adds that a bit of incentive to get out there and get active.
So there's so many options there. You highlighted the local sports partnerships. Wherever you're sitting or standing in the country, get onto your own local sports partnership, because there's going to be opportunities for physical activity and different sports engagements through that. And there is enhanced environments now. There's more walkways and greenways. It's fantastic that they're there, but we need to get out and use them, don't we?
Yeah, as you said earlier in the podcast, I'm based in Mayo. We have a greenway running from Westport all the way to Achill. So people can walk on it, people can cycle on it. And as you said, there's greenways popping up all over the place. We really need to find them out and utilise them and use them. Make it a social occasion as well. We can bring family and friends, arrange to meet up in the greenway. It's safe, it's off the road, and it's tailor-made for physical activity.
Yeah, they're wonderful. The other signpost I wanted to flag as well was the Park Run initiative, because the HSE have been supportive of that for many years. But it is another community-based, it's a Saturday morning 5K. They're scattered all around the country now, isn't they?
Yeah, most towns and villages now, 9:30 every Saturday morning, there's a 5K run. And then some have also incorporated a kids park run on a Sunday. It's a 2K run distance. And again, adults are encouraged to accompany their kids. I think it's the ages from 4 to 14 for the kids park run. So that's really, really good as well. Yeah, the park runs, they're a fantastic idea. Again, it's an achievable distance.
It's not competitive. You don't have to. You do your own pace, and there's support for everybody participating, isn't there?
And a lot of people end up volunteering, they're timekeepers. for various different weeks, it becomes a little bit of a community really in each local setting.
Yeah. And tying over to mental health and back to you, Nollaig, like physical activity is a big mental health promotion initiative as well, isn't it? Really?
Absolutely. It's so important to be active and find ways to be active every day. And just tailoring that to yourself, what you're interested in, what you enjoy, sticking to something that will suit your mobility and your fitness level. But I think the enjoyment part is key, because that's what will keep you coming back. It'll be a sustainable habit for the long term for your health.
Joy isn't emphasised enough, I think. Marie Kondo, she went viral about tidying up your house during COVID, I think. She had a Netflix series around people that were cluttering up their house. And she said, if you don't find joy in it, get rid of it. That's kind of linked to your recommendation around physical activity. Find something that gives you joy, be it with a buddy, or be a run or a walk. You're much more likely to sustain it and hold on to it if it's giving you joy, isn't it?
Absolutely. It can be a great motivator. Yeah.
What else should we be highlighting in terms of mental health strategies at this time of year?
Yeah, so managing stress and anxiety in the new year, it can really set that positive tone for us for the upcoming months. So just a couple of tips on that. So taking time every day, if you can, for mindfulness or meditation, this can really help calm our minds. It can reduce stress and help with our emotional resilience. So even if it's just a couple of minutes of deep breathing to get your day off to a good start. And as we mentioned, regular physical activity can be such a powerful tool, and also for those physical symptoms of stress, to manage those. And just focusing on what you can control. This can be a great one, because stress, a lot of the time, it can come from worrying about those things that are beyond our control. And just staying in touch with nature, as we mentioned, it can have a real calming effect in reducing those stress levels and improving our mood as well.
Okay. And in terms of signposts and resources for those seeking support around mental health and wellbeing, or to go deeper on some of the issues and the topics that you touched on there, what would you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge amount of resources for those seeking support. So, for example, on specific topics like anxiety, stress, low mood and self-help, if you go to yourmentalhealth.ie, and there's also a free phone line. It's the HSE Mental Health Information Line. So this number is 1800 111 888 if you want more information about mental health supports. Also, the West Be Well directory. It has a range of assistance throughout the West. And social prescribing as well offers a great chance to improve social connection. So for this, you can go to allirelandsocialprescribing.ie. But there are plenty of other programs available within the community as well. So one of these, for example, is the 5 Ways to Wellbeing. So the 5 Ways to Wellbeing are those simple evidence-based actions that can help us.
We've touched on some of them already. Yeah, tell us more.
Sure, yeah. So those 5 ways are connect, be active, take notice, keep learning and give. So for example, to touch on some of the things we mightn't have mentioned yet, connecting. Yeah. This is so important, connecting with the people around us and even connecting with ourselves, which is something we can tend to forget to do sometimes. This just helps us to feel happier. It gives us that little bit of security and that sense of purpose as well. And obviously being active, it can really help create those positive changes in the body, but in the brain as well. And taking notice, just paying attention to our own thoughts, feelings and emotions, knowing what's going on in the mind, what's happening up there, tuning in, knowing what we might need.
Is that linked to your connecting with yourself point? It's all a bit reflective, self-awareness.
Yes, I suppose they're all interlinked and connecting with yourself, just working on that skill of self-awareness, I suppose. Knowing what's going on up there, what you might need, which can help you be a bit more proactive then in doing the things that you may need to do to help cope with whatever might be going on, or just even to help you feel a little bit better.
Yeah. Great.
So also keep learning would be one of the 5 ways. So this could be setting a challenge for yourself or even learning a new skill that can really help with your own sense of self-confidence and self-esteem. And the 5th one is give. So giving to others can be an incredibly rewarding thing to do, and even giving to yourself as well. We have to mention that. So that could be through something like practicing gratitude. For example, using a gratitude journal. This can really help shift that mindset and shift that perspective and just help you to look after your well-being.
The volunteering would come under that as well. A lot of people give through their voluntary efforts, whether it's a local GA club or helping out in the tidy towns, but giving to something else or helping out or giving your time. You come home and you think, well, that was useful. You're not doing it for yourself for as part of your job. I just want to highlight as part of the mental health resources, my mental health plan on the HSE website, which asks you to answer 4 questions and then it gives you some advice to some of the resources that you flagged, Nollaig, there. So that's just another thing that people can log on to. So in terms of mental well-being, one of the big things that we often hear mentioned, Rob Kearney actually was on one of our webinars last year, on our Men's Health Week webinar, and he was kind of giving advice around health and well-being for men. But he said number one was sleep. He said all through my training and, sleep is just so regenerative that we have to make sure that you get as much sleep as possible. Now, I'm not great at it myself, but something I think I have to improve. But it is one of those things, isn't it, Nollaig?
It is absolutely one of those key things that's so vital for our health. And, it just helps our body to recover, and it helps us to maintain those essential functions. So really what it's doing is it's helping us reset and recharge. So both for the body and the brain. And more than 7 hours would be recommended for adults. The ideal amount would be 8, but everyone is different as well.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to put a bit of work into that. That's coming from my own space, self-reflection, that your sleep habits, what you do with your devices and your stress, like you mentioned there, ruminating on things that mightn't even happen, so you do have to do some work on it. There's so many elements to sleep that we need to consider.
There are, absolutely. And there are some great tips for improving our sleep habits and just creating that restful environment that's so important. So if you can stick to a sleep routine, this really helps your body clock get into that rhythm, getting up and going to bed at the same time and making sure you get out to get that light exposure during the day. Avoid substances as well that can disrupt your sleep. So things like alcohol or caffeine or having large meals in the 3 or 4 hours before we get to sleep. And creating a wind down routine can be great as well. So you can implement anything you think might suit. It could be gentle stretches, yoga, maybe even listening to relaxing sounds, doing a bit of meditation. And if you can, limit the devices that you use in the hour before you go to sleep, because this can really affect your body clock. And if you can, just make sure your room is not too hot or cold. Keep the space dark. We've touched on physical activity quite a lot as well. This can be a great one to improve your sleep and to help you fall asleep faster. Just try and avoid any vigorous exercise in the hour before you go to sleep as well. And one last tip really on this as well is to keep a sleep diary. So this can be really helpful to help you to figure out why you can't get to sleep.
Yeah. Okay, great. So the next topic we have here is in relation to alcohol and substance misuse. And back to you, Sean. This is another one of those big things, particularly in relation to alcohol, isn't it?
Yeah, the Healthy Ireland survey tells us that 3/4 of people aged between 50 and consumed alcohol in the past year, and 28% binge drink on a typical drinking occasion. So I suppose after the excesses of Christmas and the New Year, abstaining from alcohol completely, and maybe for the month of January, can really appeal to some people. Giving up alcohol can mean better sleep, weight loss, and more energy. And obviously, if you have more energy, and we spoke about the benefits of having better sleep, you'll be able to get more physically active and do a lot more things and be more productive with your time. But again, abstaining from alcohol completely isn't for everybody either. And we know that when we talk about amounts and volumes of alcohol, there is no safe or healthy amount. But keeping within the HSE's low-risk guidelines can reduce your risk of harm. So the low-risk guidelines for healthy adults, what are they? For women, it's less than 11 standard drinks per week. And for men, less than 17 standard drinks per week. You're probably going to ask me, what is one standard drink?
And it's something that does cause a bit of confusion. A lot of people think a standard drink is a pint.
Yeah.
And that's wrong.
They do. And that is the conception out there. So just to clear it up, one standard drink is half a pint of beer, stout or ale, or it could be one single measure of a spirit, or it could be one small glass of wine. So people think that it's the standard drink and it's one of what they usually drink. But no, in terms of pints, as you said, it unfortunately for some is half a pint as opposed to a pint.
And then the recommendation is 6 units at any one time. So if we have 3 pints, that's your limit. The survey's findings around a relatively high level of binge drinking still. That's the cutoff. That's what we should be thinking about. So, we do have to change that norm in Ireland, definitely.
Yeah, it was an interesting point there to see in the Health Ireland survey that almost 30% binge drink on a typical drinking occasion. And I think a lot of people might be binge drinking unknown to themselves because, as I said, they're not really aware of what the safe guidelines are. And again, just to mention in terms of supports and services in relation to alcohol and other drugs, the local and regional drug and alcohol task forces provide fantastic information on programmes and supports in people's local communities. And also the HSE's drug and alcohol helpline, which is 1800 495 495. And that helpline provides a free and confidential service to support anyone with a concern related to alcohol or drugs.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And again, we'll have those resources and links in the podcast information. So in terms of wrapping up here, you've mentioned a lot of information here that people can use themselves or use with people they're working with. Is there any advice that you give to people working with other groups, other people working in the health promotion area like yourselves? You know, when you're working with individuals and groups around behaviour change and the early part of the year, what advice would you give people in terms of kind of encouraging other people around the behaviour change?
Something I like to mention sometimes in terms of motivation is it's almost like a magnet in a way. So if you have those goals that are quite clear and meaningful to you, they tend to pull you towards them. And this pull, sometimes it can weaken, so your motivation might lower at times. But if you can just reconnect with the reason behind your goals, that can often help you to get back on track and to continue as you were.
So name and nail your why.
Your why, your reasoning for this goal. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Any ideas around that, Sean?
Yeah, I think everyone is different, Fergal. So, and everyone has different goals. People need to look at your current lifestyle and identify some key areas that you want to introduce change to. It may be one of the big four that we mentioned earlier on, or it may well be indeed all four. But whatever it is, I think the motivation needs to be for the right reason. So do it for yourself and start early in the year, and that'll give yourself the best chance of succeeding.
And Sean, you were saying that the local spaces needs to be considered for where you're going to be able to get out to, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think people just need to look at the free resources available in their own communities and that are close to home. You know, link in and reach out with local sports and activity groups and utilise the parks, the walkways, the greenways. These are all natural resources. They're free, they're safe, they enable active travel, they enable activity, and they enable recreation. And they're on our doorstep and they should be utilised more.
Okay, great. One of the things that you mentioned, Nollaig, a few times was the connection. That could cut through all your lifestyle topics and say, this is going to give me more joy, it's going to give me more well-being, it's going to give me more lasting memories. If you're spending more time, if you're connecting with either your family or friends a bit more. So sometimes it's stepping back from some of these lifestyle focused things and looking at, as you said, in terms of mental well-being, that connection could be the best New Year's resolution of all.
Yeah, I think, Fergal, like you said, it could be stepping back, it could be slowing down, reminding yourself how important connection is. And it's just by spending that meaningful time with the people around us and giving time to ourselves. I think that's what can really make the difference. We know from research as well that connection is huge in terms of brain health and in building and strengthening those neural connections in the brain.
Sean, do you want to come in anything else?
As Nollaig said, you know, just to look at the free resources and that you have around you in your local community, close to your own home, and use those resources.
Absolutely. Well said. In terms of the mental health resources, Nollaig, we've mentioned before the Minding Your Wellbeing programme. I know that you're involved in delivering that. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So the Minding Your Wellbeing programme, it highlights those practical ways that we can promote and maintain our mental health. So it kind of looks at a couple of key areas. First of all, practicing self-care, also understanding our thoughts and how our thinking patterns can impact our well-being. It also looks at exploring our emotions and how we can increase our positive emotions and building positive relationships. So how we can really nurture and value those, and also improving our resilience, looking at the building blocks of resilience, what it's made up of, and focusing on our strengths as well. So the Minding Your Wellbeing programme is available for HSE staff. It's a one-day workshop. So you can contact Health Promotion and Improvement about this. And it's also available in 5 20-minute videos on YouTube. And that's under HSE Health and Wellbeing. And also just to touch on the 5 ways, this workshop is available for community groups and also HSE staff. So again, you can contact your local Health Promotion and Improvement officer about this.
Okay, so I'll just emphasise again, we have those links and information and contact points in the podcast information wherever you're listening to this. So to close there, I'd like to thank all the listeners for your continued support of the podcast. Please share this episode with anybody you think would get value out of it. And I'd like to thank particular today Sean Conneely and Nollaig for joining me. If you'd like to find out more information about HSE Health and Wellbeing, follow us on X, take a look at our Health and Wellbeing YouTube channel, register for our e-zine by emailing healthandwellbeing.communications@hse.ie. And I'd like to welcome you all to tune in to more episodes of the HSE Talk and Health and Wellbeing podcast during 2025. And best of luck to you in your healthy New Year behaviour change. This has been the HSE Talking Health and Wellbeing podcast. Thank you for listening.